Hello everybody. So today, literally just like every Sunday but one since the beginning of the year, today I talk about the buy of MicroStrategy and try to decipher what's going on. And today we have a lot to decipher today because he tweeted this: never short a man who buys orange ink by the barrel. So this quote, right, this means he probably bought a lot of Bitcoin. That's my take. He probably bought a lot. And of course, we saw that in the chart. Remember, Thursday, Friday, it was tough to understand why MicroStrategy wasn't doing too well, but the price of Bitcoin was doing just fine. Well, he was tapping the ATM pretty hard, and I think he started tapping the ATM harder as he found out about Jim Chanos going on CNBC, going on various media, talking about how he's doing the same thing, and he's selling MicroStrategy stock to buy Bitcoin. He's doing the same thing as Saylor, who's selling his stock to buy Bitcoin. Yes, well, except he's not collecting a premium to NAV like Saylor is collecting the premium to NAV. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the short, and let's talk about maybe a shift in narrative that is happening, especially as Bitcoin has crossed quite swiftly in the last few hours. It's crossed the 105 level, and as I record, this is 105.5. Maybe when this is published, this is going to be 106. So anyways, I think this tweet right here is a little different from before, because before he's always said, oh, I want them to short MSTR rather than BTC. He said that multiple times. I'd rather them short my stock. You should short my stock. And this time he changed, and he says now, never short a man who buys orange ink by the barrel. So do you want people to short the stock, or do you not want people to short the stock? And I think this could be a slight shift in narrative about the shorts. Maybe instead of welcoming the shorts, maybe now he wants fewer shorts, because if you notice, he hasn't done a convertible debt offering, and convertible debt offering was a gamma trade, and the gamma trade requires shorts for it to work. So if he hasn't offered any new convertible, that means that he wants people to buy the convertible now for the benefit of owning MSTR shares in the future. He wants the convertible buyers to change, which means that he doesn't necessarily want people to short it anymore. And so I want to talk about that. So as you know, Jim is shorting MSTR because he's betting on a price to NAV drop. He's betting that the price to NAV will reduce. And we welcomed him warmly to this trade, right? And the main thesis, of course, of someone like Jim Chanos is that there is no reason for MSTR to trade at a premium to NAV. They should trade in line with Bitcoin. The value of the operating business under MSTR has no value, no point. Like, it's only valued for the Bitcoin. That company is worthless. That's the whole argument behind why a company like MSTR should not trade at a premium over how much Bitcoin they have on the balance sheet. And MSTR has no reason to trade at a premium, right? It has no reason. Why should an asset? It's a joke. MSTR should. Some people told me I'm being too sarcastic sometimes. It's a joke. MSTR should definitely trade at a premium. But let's assume it has no reason to trade at a premium. Yeah, an asset, BTC yield means that essentially if you hold MSTR for 3 years, you're essentially breaking even on the price to NAV, breaking even on the Bitcoin, right? If you pay 2x for an asset for one, but then that one is going to grow at 45% and 45% and 40%, then all of a sudden you're back at a 2 and above a 2 and above and beyond. I've shown that chart multiple times. You pay a premium up front, and then you get a yield going forward. That alone, in my view, can sustain the price to NAV. But even without that, there's a lot of reason as to why you would want to do a price to NAV. Saylor gave us a full slide, with like, I think 11 or 12 bullet points about this. But just a few of them, and I'll make that video about the reason why I think MSTR trades at price to NAV. But just a few of the reasons are things like tax-advantaged accounts in so many places. You can only buy stocks, and so I know that's the case for people in the United Kingdom. They can't really buy a Bitcoin ETF in a tax-advantaged account, but they can buy MSTR. I've covered MetaPlanet a few times on this channel now. Same thing in Japan. In Japan, if you want to own Bitcoin, it's a 55% capital gains tax. If you own a stock in a tax advantage account, a stock that's exposed to Bitcoin like MetaPlanet, then you get zero tax. So zero tax versus 55% tax. In my book, that alone should explain a 2x price to NAV. But then there's other reasons, like, for example, leadership. Does leadership ever justify a premium? Obviously, someone like Chanos, who's famed for shorting Tesla, does not give any value to the premium placed by the market on a leader, right? Tesla, arguably, very likely trades at a premium because of Elon Musk. And in fact, we know it does, because when the fake story from the WSJ came out, the stock dropped in after hours just out of fear that Elon would leave, right? So stocks trade at a premium because of leaders. You know, this was the case for Disney back in the day. This was the case for a lot of stocks can trade at a premium for a leader. And of course, who's like one of the top 3 leaders in Bitcoin? That's Michael Saylor. So of course, the fact that you have Michael Saylor leading that company, isn't that worth a little bit of a premium? That's probably worth quite a bit of a premium in my view. There's another reason as to why MSTR should trade at more than 1, is the volatility is higher, right? The volatility is much higher. And you know, if the volatility is higher, that means that stock has a use beyond just buy and hold and just sitting on the stock and doing nothing. It has a use beyond that buy and hold use. And that use is the options market. If you own MSTR, you have a high octane fuel for your options engine. You have a lot of people who do the wheel on MSTR, you know, cash secured puts, covered calls, cash secured puts, covered calls, and you do that and you do that, and right there you can pretty much outperform MSTY. I mean, this is a similar synthetic version of that they do writing these covered call strategies. These stocks have a lot of value because of their volatility, and you can just put them in an options engine, which is why if they trade at a 1, that means they would have a volatility close to Bitcoin or the same as Bitcoin. But the volatility of a stock like MSTR is much higher than Bitcoin because of the tweets, because of the debates of people like Jim Chanos coming on CNBC and saying, oh, I'm selling MSTR and buying Bitcoin, right? Because of that. And so that volatility means the stock should trade at a premium, just because if you put it in your options engine, you're going to earn a yield. And you have a lot of people who come to Bitcoin stocks not because they care about Bitcoin. They come to Bitcoin stocks because they want to earn that options yield, that options premium. And I could tell you, it's not just MSTR, right? Palantir, you have a lot of people who don't own Palantir because they like the stock. They own Palantir because they like the volatility. SMCI is the same thing, right? Tesla, a lot of the shareholders of Tesla own Tesla because it's volatile, not necessarily because they believe in Tesla. So, and of course, you have to assume that MSTR can't harvest that premium in any way by issuing financial instruments. This was the early day, the first innovation of Saylor with convertible debt, is that when you issue a convertible bond, who earns the premium of that long-term call option, right? Who is the seller of that long-term call option embedded in the convertible bond? Well, in that case, the seller is MSTR themselves. So MSTR themselves collects the premium, just like anybody owning MSTR stock could sell a call and collect a premium on that call. So there's a lot of reasons as to why MSTR trades at a premium and should trade at a premium, but I think there is also this shift of narrative, and this shift of narrative maybe that really Saylor doesn't want the shorts to lose money because it's not in the ethos of Bitcoin, and there is no upside to anybody losing money on MSTR. There is no upside to anybody going on CNBC and arguing on CNBC that the stock is no good. Like, what's the upside? Who wins in this? Nobody wins in doing this. There is no upside. The ethos of Bitcoin is a positive ethos. It's a ethos of optimism and hope and all of the good things, and resilience and all of the good things that say, you know, feel like positive psychology, for example, has to offer. Anyways, let's talk about also the problem of shorting at a price of NAV of a 1.9 or 1.95, I think it is right now. What's the problem of deciding to short at a price of NAV of 1.95, like is essentially what Jim Chanos did? What's the problem? Well, the problem is the price of NAV for Michael Saylor, MSTR, that price to NAV has been much higher during periods of high bull markets. And in fact, go back to the last bull market, and you can see that this stock traded for a period of, let's call it 5 months, traded well above 3. And in fact, maybe 3 or 4 months, 2 months, let's call it 3 months, maybe about 3 months, for about 3 months. that stock traded at a price to NAV of above a 4. So, and for about 1 month, it trading at a price to NAV of above a 5. And for about like 2 weeks or 1 week, it traded at a price to NAV of above a 6. So, given the cycle of Bitcoin, and given that we're probably entering the euphoric part of Bitcoin, shorting at a 2x price to NAV is not a really good idea. Like, you know, like if you're gonna do a trade, wait until it reaches a 6x price to NAV. Don't do a trade when it's like a 1.95x price to NAV. And you know, we saw a little idea of what this could be when it reached, you may remember, in late November 2024, the price to NAV was about at a 3.3 up to a 3.5 at some point. Like, we saw just a little snippet of what may happen when we actually get that parabolic move in the price of Bitcoin, which I believe is going to happen in the later half of 2025. And so this is just not a really good time, because you have a regular price to NAV, which I think the new floor is going to be 1.5 or something like that. I don't think we're going to go much lower. But then you have the euphoria price to NAV. And if you get into a euphoria price to NAV, that means the price to NAV is going to exceed a 3. It could go much higher than that, although I hope not, because if it goes much higher than that, that means Saylor stop doing the ATM. In my view, we're not going to get much past a 5 or a 6 on the price to NAV during the euphoria phase, because Saylor will go hard on the ATM on price to NAV spikes, which is the smart thing to do for the long-term holders. And Saylor only works for the long-term holders. He doesn't work for the price a year from now. He works for the long-term price. And so that's why this is an asset, in my view, that can be held until infinity. I mean, you can hold this asset for a very long time, in my view. That's no financial advice, of course. So anyways, I would be careful. So if history is any guide, like I said, we're entering the middle of a Bitcoin bull market. And Bitcoin could move up towards the end of the year, maybe taking a breather, maybe sometime in 2026. And if you follow Bitcoin, you know, a lot of people argue that we are entering some form of a cycle now where Bitcoin may not even have the drawdowns that it used to have. That remains to be seen, but some people are arguing that. We'll see. I'm fine with the drawdowns. If you invest in Bitcoin, you're most likely fine with the drawdowns. But you know, some people say, "Oh, this time is different." Be careful with those words. But some people say, "Oh, QE to QE is coming, QE to infinity, liquidity is coming." You also have a lot of people who love the Fed and who say, "No, the liquidity is not coming. You don't understand." So, you know, this debate is healthy for Bitcoin. But I still think, if you look at history, Bitcoin is likely to go higher. If Bitcoin goes higher fast, the price to NAV will move fast. And if the price to NAV moves up fast, then selling MSTR at a price to NAV of a 1.9 will look like a really bad idea if MSTR gets to a price to NAV of like 3.5. And 3.5 is not even the peak. This stock has traded at a price to NAV as high as a 6 times. So I think Saylor is actually doing a favor by telling the shorts not to short the stock. He's doing a favor to the hedge funds, and I think this may be a change in the philosophy. And it's not fun to cheer anybody losing money, and so maybe that's a change in the narrative. And why do I say it's a change in the narrative? Because if you look at the Bitcoin conference, and of course a lot of conversations happen at that Bitcoin conference, at the Saylor MicroStrategy World Conference, the Strategy World Conference, you had this interview of Simon Gerovich. If you look at this interview, look it up, and go to the part where he's speaking. He says that he's wary of convertible bonds. He doesn't want to do convertible bonds because he doesn't want buyers to short his stock. And he says, he doesn't want people to be hurt. Like, he wants buyers of converts to actually buy the converts because they like the value proposition of the converts, which is downside protection and a call option embedded in it. So, 60-70% of the upside of the stock without the downside if Bitcoin were to be stagnant or not move up by much, right? And of course, if Bitcoin goes to zero, of course, these stocks have no value. But this is a prereq to even watch this video. If you think Bitcoin is going to zero, you shouldn't even watch this video. But in the skeptic scenario, the convertible bond is very appealing because it gives you that downside protection if you're a skeptic. And he would want skeptics to buy the convertible bond and not people who don't believe in Bitcoin, or not people who are actually actively shorting Bitcoin, because actively shorting Bitcoin is not helping anybody. And so I think that's a change in the narrative. Saylor, of course, hasn't done in a convert in a while. You know my stance on this. My stance on this is that the converts are too good of an instrument, and I don't think he's going to go hard on the converts anymore. And he doesn't want shorts anymore. I think maybe Saylor doesn't want the shorts anymore, because the shorts, frankly, what's the upside? What's the over a long term? When you think about Bitcoin as a long-term adoption story, there is no downside to seeing people who may be more analog, to seeing them lose money. There's just no. I mean, there's a short-term downside. You could say, "Oh, I'm happy. Oh, this bad person lost money." There's going to be a short-term downside, but over the medium term or the long term, there's literally no upside. Like, so why would you wish ill on anybody, even if it's someone who disagrees with you? That's the ethos of Bitcoin. Saylor, in his long-form interview, has always been very, very good on that. It's like, Saylor is the best money for you, but it's also the best money for your enemy. And clearly, when it's famous people who short MSTR, it's just bad media, it's bad communication, it's bad press. And so I think they may be moving away from saying we welcome the shorts, and they may be moving into, please don't short us. It's not too nice because you're going to lose money. And of course, going away with that is going also with trying to get rid of the gamma traders, which gamma traders are going to be no longer if you remove the converts. If you don't do converts, the gamma traders are going to be few and far between. And if you market the converts to simply investors who are interested in the instrument as an investment, then you don't attract the shorts. Then you would simply attract people who may be becoming more aware of the value of Bitcoin-backed debt instruments. Bitcoin-backed debt instruments, one of the forms of the future that MicroStrategy, a company which apparently doesn't do anything, is actually building, right? MicroStrategy is actually building a bond market for the future based on Bitcoin. They are an issuer of financial instruments. That is the main activity of MSTR now. They're like a private bank. They're like an investment bank. So anyways, I look forward to seeing where this heads. I look forward to seeing the buy tomorrow. I think it's going to be over $1 billion. But of course, this is no financial advice, not investment advice. This is only entertainment. Hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.